To everyone, forgotten to do that. It's a good start. Thanks to everyone for attending the meeting of the Planning Committee on the 7th of July 2026. I'm Councillor June Molyneux, Chair of the Committee. Councillor Russ Green is Vice Chair. Please note that this meeting is being streamed live on YouTube. If you're in attendance as a member of the public who's registered to speak, please note you have a time limit of up to 3 minutes. The legal officer will operate a stopwatch and confirm when your time runs out. You should then finish, or if you're in the middle of making a point, wind up and finish speaking. Otherwise, your microphone will be muted. To assist in following the evening's proceedings, a pack's been prepared, available online, containing each item's report, plans, presentation slides and any addendum. After officers have presented the report and any speakers have made their representations, I will invite members to speak and make any comments. When you wish to speak, please raise your hand when invited and remember to use your microphone, as I didn't. And reference the paragraph number, which will allow everyone to follow. Please keep in mind that some people require closed captions and our lip reading to follow the proceedings. So please speak slowly, clearly, and keep your hands away from your mouth. Please can everyone ensure the phones are turned to silent. We're not expecting a fire drill, so if the alarm sounds, please exit the same way you came in. Apologies. I've had apologies from Councillors Hilton and Wilkie, with Councillors G and Sherwood attending as substitutes. With that, item 1 is declarations of any interests. Members are reminded of their responsibility to declare any pecuniary interest in respect of matters on the agenda. If you have a pecuniary interest, you must withdraw from the meeting. Normally, you should leave the room before the business starts to be discussed, but you do, however, have the same rights as to speak as a member of the public and may remain in the room to enable you to exercise that right. And then, in the case, you must not seek to improperly influence a decision on the matter. Item 2 is minutes of the 16th of June, the Planning Committee on the 16th of June. Will somebody move those, please? Thank you, Councillor Southern. Will somebody second? Thank you, Councillor Top. All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Moving swiftly on to the planning items to be determined tonight. For the benefit of the public here tonight, the speaking arrangements for Planning Committee are as follows. Officers will summarise the report and registered speakers will be invited to speak in the following order: objector, supporter, parish or town councillor, ward councillor, applicant or agent. All registered speakers will be allowed to speak for up to 3 minutes, apart from the ward councillor, who may speak for up to 5 minutes. In the event that all speakers are against an application, as chair, I may grant the applicant or representative a time extension. I would respectfully ask members of the public who have not registered to speak to remain quiet throughout the proceedings. With that, we'll move on to item 3A. North East Avenue, Railway Road, Brinscall, pages 5 to 62, with an update on your addendum. Chris is going to present this item. The officer recommendation remains that planning permission be granted subject to conditions and a Section 106 legal agreement. I have 2 registered speakers, the ward councillor, Councillor Whiffen, and the agent, Alexis DePaul. Chris, can you present the report, please?
Yep, thank you, Chair. So the site is located within the settlement of Withnail to the northwest of Railway Road. It's a well-proportioned and irregular shaped parcel of land with levels falling across the site on a northwest to southeast axis. The site contains a group of functional industrial buildings along with extensive areas of concrete hard standing and storage yards. The site is now vacant, however it did previously accommodate a timber processing business, and the immediate locality contains a mix of land uses and built forms, including a terrace of traditional stone-built dwellings to the northeast at Mount Pleasant. A range of commercial uses are located further to the northeast along Berry Lane, and there's a health centre to the southeast of the site. The application seeks full planning permission for the erection of 75 dwellings following the demolition of all the buildings across the site. The site will be accessed from the existing vehicle access points along Railway Road, and 2 new access points would also be formed from Railway Road. The development would consist entirely of market tenure housing, which is considered to be in accordance with paragraph 65 of the framework, which states that in order to support the reuse of brownfield land, where vacant buildings are being used or redeveloped, any affordable housing contribution should be reduced by a proportionate amount. A full assessment of this can be found at paragraphs 106 to 114 of the committee report, along with a full assessment of the scheme, and the recommendation is that the application should be approved. With regards to the principle of the development, it should be noted that there is no dispute between the council and the planning agent that the proposal fails to satisfy the requirements of Core Strategy Policy 10. This is due to a lack of employment marketing evidence. However, the scheme does comply with all of the other criteria of this policy. However, given that Chorley does not have a 5-year deliverable supply of housing, paragraph 11D2 of the framework is engaged, which states that where the most important policies for determining application are out of date, planning permission should be granted unless the adverse impacts of the proposal would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits when assessed against the policies of the framework taken as a whole. As this is the case, the report contains a planning balance assessment. This balances the adverse impacts of the proposal through the identified policy conflicts against the benefits of the scheme, which include a range of economic factors through the provision of new housing, construction and supply chain jobs, increased local spend and greater choice in the local markets. There will be a range of social benefits, again through the provision of new housing at a time when the council cannot demonstrate an adequate supply of housing, and there will be benefits in respect of neighbouring amenity through the removal of an intensively used industrial site. It should also be noted that paragraph 125C of the framework states that planning policies and decisions should give substantial weight to the value of using suitable brownfield land within settlements for homes. Overall, the adverse impacts are not considered to be so severe that they would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the identified benefits. So, in total, 10 objections to the scheme have been received. These cite a range of concerns, including highways impacts, congestion, loss of employment land, flood risk, and a lack of local infrastructure, in particular GP places. However, there are no outstanding objections to the scheme from any of the technical consultees. It's noted that LCC Highways do not have any objections and consider the proposed access to be acceptable, and the Environment Agency have confirmed that they have no objections in respect of flood risks, which will be very low. It's considered that the site is capable of accommodating the amount of proposed development in such a way that there would be no unacceptable adverse harm to the character of the area or neighbouring amenity. It's also considered that the scheme would be acceptable with regards to ecology and biodiversity, with a biodiversity net gain assessment has been submitted, which demonstrates a biodiversity net gain of around 360%. So to conclude, the officer recommendation is to approve. This is subject to the conditions as explained within the committee report and a Section 106 legal agreement to secure a financial contribution for the provision of public open space as well as an education contribution. Thank you.
Thanks for that. Councillor Whiffen.
Thanks, Chair. The key issue I want to discuss today is whether there is sufficient justification for the permanent loss of an employment site in our borough. So first, I would like to recap Policy 10 of the Central Lancashire Core Strategy to members. This policy requires landowners to demonstrate genuine and sustained marketing of a site for employment use over a 12-month period without success before seeking to change its use. The purpose of the policy is to establish whether there is a realistic demand for employment use before the site is released for alternative development. The officer's report confirms that this 12-month marketing exercise has not been undertaken and therefore concludes that the policy conflicts with Policy 10. Members should also note paragraph 34, which makes clear that the starting point of Policy 10 is to retain employment sites unless it has been demonstrated they are no longer suitable or viable for employment purposes. Criterion A, as mentioned in the report, is concerned with protecting the type and quality of employment land, not simply maintaining the overall quantity across the borough. Now, while the applicant places significant weight on the fact that the site is not formally designated in the Central Lancashire Local Plan, paragraph 35 confirms that Criterion A applies to all functional employment sites to prevent the unacceptable loss of business land. The burden therefore lies with the applicant to demonstrate that the site is no longer viable for employment use, and the officer's report concludes that this has not been demonstrated. I would also like to remind members that, to our knowledge, a previous prospective purchaser was discouraged by the council from purchasing the site due to the employment reasons just mentioned. Next, I refer members to paragraphs 106 to 114 of the report, which confirms that no affordable housing is being provided. Now, as Executive Cabinet Member for Homes and Housing, this is a huge concern for me. Members will be aware that major housing developments are normally required to provide 30% affordable housing. In this case, the requirement is 0%. None. Paragraph 107 notes the applicant's claim that the scheme would be unviable if affordable housing were required, yet no viability assessment has been submitted. Instead, the applicant relies on vacant building credit, which, for the benefit of any members who don't know what this is, was intended as a financial incentive brought in by the national government to bring vacant or derelict buildings back into use. However, this loophole should only exist when knocking down vacant or derelict buildings, and paragraph 109 makes it very clear that these buildings are neither derelict nor abandoned. In fact, they were only active a couple of weeks ago, actually. The result is a scheme delivering 75 market homes with no contribution to affordable housing, despite significant local need. The proposal should, in my view, deliver 23 affordable homes, including 16 social rent properties for people and families with a local connection to Chorley who are currently on the housing register awaiting accommodation. It is difficult to justify approving a scheme that makes no contribution towards meeting that need when affordable housing is so needed. So if approved, this application will allow profit to Rowland Homes while delivering no affordable housing, no social rent homes, and a net loss of local employment land. This is a terrible deal for Chorley. So next, let's look at the reality of our local services. The developer argues twice in their application that this housing is sustainable for future residents because they can easily walk to their village amenities, but their information is completely out of date. The Brinscoll Post Office has permanently closed, as have many local businesses. The nearest post office facility is now on Eves Lane in Chorley, not in Chorley North East. This development forces a double blow on our community. It permanently strips away vital employment land while bringing new residents to an area that desperately needs more jobs, not more commuters. So finally, I would ask members to consider refusing this application on the grounds it contradicts Policy 10, given the applicant has not attempted to market alternative employment use for the land before converting their application to housing. I also ask members, please remember the seriousness of approving a housing development that offers no affordable housing for our most vulnerable residents in our borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whiffen. Have I got Alexis, please?
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. With regards to the loss of employment land and Policy 10, it's incorrect to state that the site, no evidence has been demonstrated with regards to viability. The committee report confirms that the only element of Policy 10 which is conflicted with is the lack of a marketing exercise. It confirms that a viability and marketing statement was submitted, which confirms it is not a viable prospect for an employment reuse, and that was accepted. It confirms that the site is no longer lends itself to requirements of modern employment uses, which was submitted, which was supported by significant evidence, which was accepted. And it confirms that there's not an unacceptable reduction in the type, quantity or quality of employment land supply in the borough as a whole. In terms of national policy does not require a 12-month marketing exercise or demonstration of lack of demand in circumstances where the land is not required in terms of the supply of employment land, or where the land is not viable to be continued to use as employment land. And as the officer report highlights, the DXC technology site appeal decision in Exton confirms that Policy 10 is more restrictive than national policy in this regard. Ultimately, what you have here is a site which is previously developed, vacant, is not suitable for continued use, and is not viable for continued employment use, alongside an authority that does not have a 5-year housing land supply and is having to release greenfield land and greenbelt sites to meet that supply. Consequently, as set out in the officer report, irrespective of the fact that Policy 10 is out of date, the benefits of helping to address the housing shortfall on this previously developed site would outweigh conflict with the loss of employment land in any event. With regards to vacant building credit, the councillor is incorrect in the interpretation. It's when buildings have been abandoned that you cannot apply vacant building credit. Vacant building credit is to encourage the redevelopment of existing vacant buildings, and that is quite clearly set out in the committee report. Ultimately, what you have here is a positive redevelopment of a vacant brownfield site, which will otherwise fall into further disrepair. It will secure significantly more green space, landscaping and biodiversity benefits than what currently exist on site, with it being established that the proposals will generate 364% biodiversity net gain. It will help deliver housing to address the current housing shortfall, which is presently resulting in the need to release greenfield land and greenbelt land, and it will deliver significant benefits. It's supported by statutory consultees, and as set out in the officer report, there's no reasonable basis to refuse planning permission. I'm happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you. Do you want to come back on anything? No. Over to you, members.
Yeah, difficult on this. I think this is a really poor planning application, and I agree with the ward councillor that there isn't a lot of the way of benefit for that. Could we explain again, I mean, why we're not, there's no contribution to affordable housing from the site? We're not seeing any proper viability document. Just on the face of it, and knowing the site and knowing where it is, this is a very attractive place to live. I wouldn't particularly oppose the site if there was a decent planning application for it. In terms of the marketing of the site for industrial use, we have no proof other than what what's been said by the applicant that there's any. Whether there is some demand here. I'm sure there is some demand. It's just a question of viability, isn't it? Of course, this land will generate more value for the owner as housing land than as industrial land. But that's not what our planning policies are about. We want development. We want housing development. We want industrial development. This is an industrial site at the moment. It could continue to be an industrial site. I also think it could be a really good housing site if we had a proper application for it. But at the moment, I'm inclined to reject this application because I don't think it gives any real benefit to Chorley or Brinscoll. So, and just to help me, please, just why this section, why there is no affordable housing on this site. I do not believe that the viability study, and we've not seen any evidence of it whatsoever.
Kevin.
Thanks, Chair. Just on the affordable housing to start with, the site benefits from being eligible for the vacant building credit, which means that the floor space on site can be sort of traded off against the new floor space created, meaning that there's no affordable housing required. This is set out at National Planning Policy Framework at paragraph 65. So in accordance with that, then we can't ask for an affordable housing contribution or provision on this site, and it meets the national requirements in terms of affordable housing.
I think that's quite a perverse interpretation of that. That's not that wasn't the purpose of this. The purpose of that policy was to redevelop, vacant, derelict industrial buildings, isn't it? Not and gives encourage developers to look at redeveloping buildings. Now nobody wants to redevelop these buildings because they're bloody horrible, aren't they? And they're not and they're on the landscape, but. I don't think that's sufficient to support that point.
Just to come back,
Yeah,
come
go
back on that. So yeah, all we've done is apply the requirements of the National Planning Policy Framework, which we have to do, and that's key in our decision-making process. So we have to make our decisions in line with that. We can't ask for affordable housing contributions where national policy says that we are unable to do so. Just turning as well, just on the demand for employment sides and the lack of marketing that's been carried out over the required 12-month period in terms of Policy 10. Policy 10's out of date in respect of the planning policy context in which we're operating in at the minute, as we don't have a 5-year supply, and therefore paragraph 11D applies of the National Planning Policy Framework, which I appreciate members may think that we repeat that over and over to them, but that's the reality of the position that we're in. So as that policy is out of date in terms of our housing supply, we have to go with the NPPF, and that, as the speaker mentioned in support of the application, that's much less restrictive than what our policies are. But because of our housing supply position, we have to fall back on the NPPF rather than on Policy 10. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. I'm going to take the contrary view to my colleague Councillor Snow. There are more pluses to this development than there are minuses from what I can see on it. Yes, it's an industrial site. It's a brownfield site, and it's where you should be building. Amenity for a start off. Would you rather look at that, or would you rather look at new houses? That's your first one. Amenity in terms of bio-net gain, massive one, going from that to that one there. That's, again, calculated through. Points being made about this viability of this vacant building credit and the fact it hasn't been marketed. All I would say to you on that one there is be very careful what you wish for with vacant building credit. For example, if a glue factory wants to come in there and take it over, and has got 200 wagons coming every day, what would you rather have? There's always a double-edged sword to things. So whilst I get the point that's being made about has it been marketed, is it viable, is it vacant, there's always a counter to that one there. If somebody wanted to come and develop that site for industrial purposes, you could well end up with not a timber yard, but something quite more unpleasant. In terms of the social housing side, yes, the calculation has been done for that, and there's a reason why. Brownfield sites are inherently more expensive to develop, and if you look at the chunk of concrete that sits right across that, that will give you an idea. All that concrete's got to come up. That's an expensive site to develop, and we know this from Woodlands, which we took over, and we've had to clear the site off. That's why it's expensive. But in terms of the social housing, just to give you an idea on that one there, the UK sits in terms of proportion of 16% proportion of social housing compared to the average of Europe, which is 8%. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't be doing the social housing. We should, because there's a place for it. But in terms of that one there, we sit at 16 compared to the average of 8% in Europe. So the social argument for the housing side of it doesn't always stack. And the reason why this is being developed is because it isn't a vacant industrial site. So I'm minded to say I'd like to propose acceptance on this, but I'm going to wait to see what my colleagues say on that before I put a formal proposal forward. But on the face of it, I think this is exactly where you should be building, on vacant brownfield sites and not on greenbelt. Thank you.
Come back on a point of information.
Point to say. Hang on.
I beg your pardon, Chairman. Yeah, all right, yeah, I beg your pardon. Yeah, Councillor Southern quotes the two statistics, about 16% and 8%. We have a crisis in this country of the lack of affordable social rented housing. So that 8% in Europe, where if you go to Germany, you know, because they've had policies since the reconstruction of their German cities, where they've had 50 and 60% of social housing rebuilt. You know, that's why they've ended up with across Europe and, you know, France as well, 8%. Yeah, fine, but you know, it's not. It's different in this country. We have a massive shortage, so I think that's completely irrelevant, that statement.
I'm not familiar with this site, Chair, but I'm sympathetic to what Chris has been saying. And if we go to a vote for a refusal, I'd be happy to second that. If that's not, when I looked at the plans, it looks extremely congested. It's very, very well packed. There's not much room on it when we looked at the site plan and the development plan. And to talk about 2 lorries coming and 150 cars coming is nonsense. So I'd like to sort of second Councillor Chris Snow's proposal for a refusal. I thought you made one.
No, we've not had any
Well, if
formal
he's-
propositions for anything yet.
Well, if he's not made one, I'll make one then, Chair. And if that fails, Chair, I'd like to ask us, so that many of us around here don't know this site particularly well, perhaps we could have a site visit before we come back. Thank you.
Councillor,
So just in terms of, just for, to you, Chair, to Kevin, where Craig's mentioned about, you know, something like a glue factory coming in, where would that stand in terms of planning permission requirements? So because it's already an industrial site, could somebody just rock up and say, look, we want to do that, put this on without planning restrictions? Or what planning restrictions would there be if another you know, sort of industrial type application was going to go there?
Through you, Chair, another industrial use within that same B2 use class could move onto the site tomorrow and start operating without any restriction. So there are currently no restrictions in terms of noise levels, hours of operation on that site, because it's been a long-standing use on there. So it's got no planning restrictions. So another industrial use could move onto that site tomorrow without the need for planning permission, and could operate 24/7. In terms of planning, there are other ways that possibly the council could control such uses, but through the planning system, they could move on there tomorrow and operate 24/7. Thanks, Chair.
any more comments from anybody? At the moment, I think I've got a proposal and a seconder for a site visit and a proposal for a refusal, but I'm not sure what the reasons. Councillor Southern.
Yeah, I'll move to the vote on that if I can. Propose that we accept officer recommendations to pass this, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. Well, I'll take the amendment first. All those in favour of a site visit, please show. Up when it comes up. Oh, it's coming. In technology, wonderful. Shall I go to the old-fashioned way?
The voting do, it's just, I'm not going on the screen, that's all.
Right. We'll go back to the old-fashioned way I'm used to. All those in favour of a site? Oh, it's come. Yeah, but nobody's voted yet.
Yeah.
I haven't. Right.
Members have voted against the site visit.
Okay. Thank you. Now, can we go to the officer recommendation, please? Because I've got a proposer and a seconder for that. All those in favour of the officer recommendation? That's it. Can't see. Okay.
Members have voted to approve planning permission subject to conditions in a Section 106 legal agreement.
Okay, thank you. If anybody just came for that and they wish to go, please feel free to do so. You want to speak now?
Yeah.
Item B and C of him is wrong. Kevin will explain.
Thank you, Chair. Just to provide members with some context on why the applications were withdrawn from the agenda. So last week we received a number of appeal decisions on permissions in principle and specifically on grey belt issues. The points raised related in those appeal decisions to the density of the development and making an efficient use of land. So this point is directly relevant to the consideration of these applications, and they were therefore withdrawn from the agenda so that the recommendations could be reviewed by officers in light of those appeal decisions. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you. So moving on. Sorry, Councillor Singh.
Can I just know if that's okay, Chair? Obviously, being the ward councillors, obviously welcome that the recommendation is going to be reviewed on the basis of obviously the previous PIP applications that have now come back, and we can take them decisions into consideration. So no, and we welcome obviously residents' concerns will be taken on board. So thank you.
Thank you. Moving on, item 3D, 40 Irish Drive, Coppell, pages 63 to 78 with an update on your addendum. Kevin's going to present this item. The recommendation is that planning permission is granted subject to conditions, and I have 3 registered speakers: objector Stacey Harwood, the ward councillor, Councillor Berry, and the applicant Alex Apoku Boateng. Kevin, can you present the report?
Thank you, Chair. This application is to change the use of 40 Irish Drive into a children's care home for up to 2 children, with up to 3 staff members being at the property at any one time outside of the staff's changeover periods. The property is a recently built new home with a garden and space to accommodate 2 vehicles at the rear, along with a detached garage. 22 representations objecting to the application have been received, and these are summarised at paragraph 6 of your report. Coppell Parish Council have also objected to the application. The application site is within the settlement area, and therefore the proposals are acceptable in principle. The proposal is not considered to have an unacceptable impact on residential amenity. The property will continue to function like a family home and has sufficient outdoor amenity space and will be acceptable in respect of noise and other amenity impacts. No external changes are proposed to the property itself. The property has space for 2 cars, currently within the curtilage, with an extra space proposed at the side of the property. LCC, as a local highway authority, have no objections to the application. They consider the proposed use will result in 4 additional vehicle movements a day beyond that what is expected of a dwelling of this size. However, this will not cause any issues in respect of highway safety, and the proposals are acceptable in highway terms. This is subject to a condition requiring the implementation of additional parking space at the side of the property. The proposals are therefore recommended for approval, subject to the conditions listed at the end of the report. Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Kevin. Stacey?
Good evening, Chair and members of the committee. My name's Stacey Harwood and I live immediately next door to the application site at 40 Irish Drive on the Eves Green development in Chorley. Firstly, I want to make one thing absolutely clear. My objection is not to children in care being housed. Every child deserves a safe, stable and supportive home. My objection is whether the particular location is appropriate for this proposal. I ask the committee to carefully consider the planning history surrounding this application. The applicant behind this proposal previously promoted a materially similar children's home proposal at 15 Sampson Close, also on the Eves Green development, less than a mile away from this property. That application was refused twice by Chorley Council and subsequently dismissed on an appeal by an independent planning inspector. Following that decision, the applicant purchased 40 Irish Drive and shortly afterwards submitted this application. I'm not asking you to refuse the application simply because it involves the same applicant. However, I do ask that significant weight is given to the planning inspector's conclusions in the Sampson Close appeal. The inspector concluded that there was no identified need for that proposal. I therefore ask members to consider what has materially changed since that decision and whether there is evidence brought to you today that justifies reaching a different conclusion on a materially similar proposal brought forward by the same applicant with the same house size with almost the same plot within a mile's distance. Parking remains one of the most significant concerns. Under the council's own parking standards, a 4-bedroom property of this size would ordinarily require 2 parking spaces. The applicant currently has the property up for rent and has advertised this at 2 parking spaces. However, the applicant originally proposed 5 spaces and following the highway's objection now proposes 4. In my view, that demonstrates an acknowledgement that the operational requirements of this proposal are greater than those of a normal family dwelling on this estate. One of those 4 spaces is a garage, and Coppell Parish Council has confirmed that every proposed parking space falls approximately 0.5 metres short of the council's adopting parking standards. Parking standards exist for a reason, and if the proposed parking provision itself does not meet those standards, I respectfully question how the committee can be satisfied that it will safely accommodate the operational demands of this proposal without creating overspill parking within a small residential cul-de-sac on a live building site for the next 2 years. This is the main access route in and out of site. It's thoroughly visited by wagons, cement mixers and all builders. We on average have 15 cars parked in this cul-de-sac at any one time, and this is already causing problems in terms of emergency service access. The proposal is therefore not operationally comparable to a family home. It will involve staff working shifts, handovers, managers, social workers, healthcare professionals, education professionals, Ofsted inspections, maintenance contractors, deliveries and visitors on an already live building site. I respectfully ask members to consider whether the parking assessment realistically reflects how the proposal will operate in practice. 1 parking space does not exist currently on the front of the property and is I respectfully submit the evidence before you, including the planning inspector's conclusions on the Sampson Close appeal. The lack of an identified need in that previous proposal, substandard parking provision identified by Coppell Parish Council, the revised parking layout following the highway's objection and the formal objection from Taylor Wimpey, the site developer, demonstrates this proposal has not overcome the concerns that have consistently been raised, refused and dismissed. For those reasons, I respectfully ask you to refuse this application.
Thank you, Chair. Chair, members, this application must be determined on its planning merits. I propose that it is contrary to policies BNE1 and ST4 of the Chorley Local Plan, and also policy EN14, Central Lancs Local Plan, including paragraph 135F of the National Planning Policy Framework. Whilst I recognise the importance of providing suitable homes for vulnerable children, the issue before us today is not whether children homes are needed. The issue is whether this particular property in this particular location is an appropriate location for a Class 2 use. Policy BNE1 requires development to protect residential amenity and ensure that proposals do not have a significant detrimental impact on the surrounding area through their use and operation. I am not persuaded that the proposal satisfies that test. Tonight's report places considerable reliance on the suggestion that the operation of this children's home would be little different from that of a large family dwelling. However, the submitted information confirms staff arrangements involving daytime staff, waking and night staff shifts changes, and professional visitors coming and going. That pattern of activity is materially different from occupation of a single dwelling house and would introduce a greater intensity of use than that which residents would reasonably expect within their estate. Committee members should also attach weight to the character and function of this location. This is a new housing development planned and approved as a family residential estate. Character is not simply a question of buildings and appearance. It is about how an area functions on a day-to-day basis. The proposed use would alter that function in a way that is not compatible with the established residential nature of development. There are also concerns regarding parking and highway implications. Although the application proposes 4 spaces, the scheme relies on the practical use of a garage space and careful vehicle management during staff changeovers. The parish council also has objected on parking grounds, and I do not consider the evidence before us provides enough confidence that overspilling parking would not occur, which would be to the detriment of neighbouring amenity. Sorry, I've just lost something here. And obviously the safety of the operation of the estate roads. We should not underestimate the significance of local concern. Residents who choose to make their homes here did so in the expectation of living within a family housing estate. Many will have made what they hoped would be a long-term or permanent commitment to that community. Whilst planning can't protect private expectations, it can and should protect residential amenity and the established character of an area where harm is identified. This proposal conflicts, as I said earlier, with BNE1 and should be refused. Thank you.
Thank you. Alex?
Chair and members of the committee, thank you so much for the opportunity to speak today. This application is for a small children's home accommodating only 2 people. It is a modest, low-impact proposal that will operate very much like normal family home, and there is no evidence that it will cause any material planning harm. The key planning issue is the actual impact of the use, not the label. This was established on the North Devon District Council versus First Secretary of State 2003, that planning decisions should focus on the real effect of the development. This home will accommodate only 2 young people with no external alteration and will remain fully compatible with the residents' character of the area. Concerns regarding traffic and parking are unsupported by evidence. The property provides for off-street parking, including a garage, which is more than enough for the proposed use, and this has been confirmed by Highway Development Control on the 14th of March. Vehicle movement will be comparable to those of a typical family household. As confirmed by Moore versus Secretary of State in 2012, decisions should be based on real-world impact rather than assumption, and no evidence has been presented of any highway or parking harm. There is also no evidence of harm to residential amenities. The home will provide a structured and professionally supervised environment with activity levels similar to those of an ordinary household. So claims of disturbance remain speculative. Many objections relate to matters that are not planning consideration, including safeguarding company finances, personal circumstances, and assumption about future occupants. In Newbury District Council versus Secretary of State in 1981, the court confirmed that planning decision must be purely based on the genuine planning consideration and the land use impact, not private concerns. I would also want to address Taylor Wimpey's objection regarding restrictive covenant. Pilkington versus Secretary of State of the Environment in 1973 confirmed that private legal rights and planning decisions are separate matters. Any covenant issue is a private legal matter and cannot justify refusal. Likewise, concern about possible future change are speculative. In summary, Mr. Chair, Madam Chair, this proposal maintains the residential character of the area. It generates negligible traffic. It provides ample on-site parking. It causes no demonstrable harm to neighbors or local infrastructure, complies with planning policy and established case laws, and also provide the needed community-based care for the vulnerable people. So I respectfully ask the committee to support the officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you. Over to you, members. Councillor Southern, did you indicate?
Craig went first.
Okay, good. Councillor Southern.
Thank you, Chair. Here we go again, Chair. Proliferation of the C3 to C2 reclassification by children's homes, yet Lancashire County Council tell us there's no requirement for them. Points been made by the applicant previously to say that there's no demonstrable disturbance created by these. I would beg to differ. A number of these homes in the area, and I'll make the point clear, this is not about the children. This is about the way these homes are run. They're a business. I've no issue with the business aspect of it. The issue is the detrimental effect to amenity for the surrounding neighbours. Look carefully at the drawing there. Could we get that up? Could we zoom in on that? Perfect. To the right-hand side on that one there, what can we see at the bottom of that road? A bell mouth. I'll guarantee that ends up filled up with cars for whatever reason. Shift changes, meetings, whatever. This is a new house on a new estate, and I don't think I would particularly like to be spending all that money on a new house on a new estate to find out I've got this next door to me. And again, I'll emphasise, this has nothing to do with the children. This is to do with the change of use on this particular house and how it will end up. And it will have a detrimental effect on that. So, my committee members are quite welcome to comment as well, Chair, but for me, I'd like to propose refusal of this application, Chair. I do say it has a detrimental effect on the amenity for naming properties because of the increased activity. I say it sits contrary to policy ST4, BNE1, EN14 and 135 of the National Policy Framework. So I would say that we reject this application, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Green and then Councillor Snow.
Yeah, so I just want to build on what Craig, because effectively I was going to say the same as Craig, and so I fully support everything Craig said as well. Also in Councillor Berry, I thought spoke ever so eloquently as well, so she made the points there which were supported with what Craig said. So I'm happy to second. Yeah, Craig's proposal.
Councillor Snow.
I'm not going to repeat what has been said eloquently by Councillor Berry and Councillor Southern. I agree with that. I just want to point out again that Lancashire County Council has said there's no demand for this within Lancashire. We've got more than enough homes. Couples in particular has got a proliferation of these homes and HMOs. We don't want to see these developments there. It can go somewhere else. They can come here and look after Lancashire children if there is a demonstrable need, but there isn't. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wishing to comment? Councillor Whittaker, Councillor Ainsworth.
Chair, we wring our hands about low-cost homes and the absence of that. This application is to care for children. I don't know how many children there are on this area at all, but there's an assumption in some of the things that are made that it's all going to be antisocial behaviour and so on and so forth. And I think that's wrong. I think that's wrong, Chair. These children are probably going to get... I don't know what your children are about. I didn't children at you, so don't children at me, pal.
Through the chair, please.
Through you, Chair. Tell him not to children at me. Yeah.
Concentrate on what...
Okay. I shall not be supporting the recommendation for refusal, Chair.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I know it's not a planning consideration, but through my job and what I do, it's not necessarily children from Lancashire that are getting housed in these properties. It's children from outside of the area that are coming into Lancashire.
Yeah, I'll just come back on that, Chair, regarding that, and once again emphasise, this is not about the children. I never mentioned on its social behaviour, Councillor Whittaker. What I said was this was a business being run from a home address. That's what I said. And my reasons for rejection would affect on the amenity, mainly around the parking and the people that will be coming to it. Nothing to do with the children.
Thank you. If everybody's spoken, then I'll move to the vote, please. So I've had a proposer and a seconder for refusal on the grounds that Councillor Southern outlined. It's not as good as down.
Members have voted to refuse planning permission on the grounds that have been mentioned.
Thank you. Anybody's come for that? Please feel free to go before we finish. Let's turn over. Okay. Oh, it is. Item 4, the appeals report, pages 79 to 82. Kevin's going to present this report, and the recommendation is to note the report, please. Kevin?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, this is just a list of planning appeals received and decisions that we've received from the 15th of May to the 29th of June, and members are asked to note that. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. I'm going to talk about the appeal by Story Homes, which was dealt with at a public inquiry. And let me first of all say that I defer all the time to planning officers' expertise. But I was extremely disappointed with the presentation that the planning department gave to the public inquiry. For people that, many people don't know the Camelot site, it's a narrow road, 350 houses, 600 cars, etc., etc., etc. It talks about sustainability and so on. The opening comment by the barrister employed by Chorley was, "We do not oppose this appeal." It was made, the appeal was made because we hadn't officially refused it, and it was so on. And when the officer said, when the barrister said that, a member of the public who was sat next to me said, "What are we doing here, Alan? What a waste of time this is." But just to remind people that Councillor Singh spoke against it, I spoke against it, the parish councils of Heskin, Charnock Richard and Eccleston spoke against it, and they employed a planning spokesman, a planning professional to speak against it, and they did. And amazingly, the day after the inspector went on a site visit, and the only thing that they came up with to register, to claim that this was a sustainable development was there would be a subsidy of local bus services. We're talking about 350 houses, 650, 700 cars going out in the morning between 8 o'clock and 10 o'clock, taking the kids to school, because there are no schools. We're going to improve the improvements to the bus stops. So these people are going to give up the car use and go to that. And then there are going to be some minor improvements to the pedestrian environment on Parkhall Road. It's a 2'6" wide footpath that's backed up by a mountainous hill. And the ultimate ridiculous suggestion was that the developer would provide a cycle rack in Coppell and Eccleston. The implication being that these residents on this tucked away rural village, which will double the size of Heskin, for example, will get on their bikes and go to Coppell or Eccleston to do some shopping or some leisure activities or whatever. I think it was a poor decision. I was disappointed because the ward councillors have made it very clear to the officers that we wanted a rigorous defence of this position, and we were extremely disappointed that that didn't come. We weren't helped by the county council highway authority that didn't offer anything other than a very small minor improvement at the junction with Wood Lane, and there's another one on this list which was turned down because Wood Lane is a windy road, and a minor improvement on the A49. Parkhall Road is used by many communities to the west of Charnock Richard to gain access, unauthorised access, to the motorway, and the motorway at Charnock Richard, which is unauthorised access, and to the M61 going to Manchester and northwards. So I wanted to say, Chairman, I'll get it, I wanted to say that we as ward councillors were very disappointed, and the communities that we represent were extremely disappointed in the way that the officers put together the case. I wonder, I repeat, what the residents said to me. What are we doing here? I'm not being a NIMBY. If somebody had come forward and said, instead of 350 houses, let's have 100 houses, that would have been sustainable. But this lot is not sustainable, and it will lead to gridlock for the next 10 years. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Can we note that report, please? Thank you.